we need information,
Hmm.
but there's something about the information.
Well, it depends what kind of information that you get,
Correct.
right? And also what you do with it. Even if you have the best information and all the information that you could ever need, if you don't do the work of processing it properly, you might end up in the same place as someone who had bad information or too little. In today's world, pretty much everyone has access to basically all information that you could need. The issue that I find, or at least the difficulty I find, is differentiating the good information from the bad information.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get into the whole misinformation thing. One thing I've also come to realize is because I was trying to base a lot of what I'm trying to do off of what I pretty much can only definitively define as fact. That's very exhausting, and it's also not really possible to do all the time. Like, you can't know everything as fact. So you do have to also, even if you have incomplete factual information, you have to have sort of a way to still navigate yourself in the most likely of correct ways. I guess you could call that intuition.
Absolutely. So I think there's two things there that you mentioned, which are key here. Number one is the quality of the information, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number one thing. And by quality, so how would we define what is high quality versus low quality information?
Well, you can go by how much of it you can actually verify yourself. Like, if someone says dropping a stone will make it hit the floor, you could go out and try that yourself, and hey, there you go, there's your confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And the source didn't come from anywhere special, but you could verify it yourself. And if it's something you can't verify yourself, something scientific that goes beyond your capabilities, for instance, you could go by where you're getting it from. Have they gotten it right before? How reliably have they gotten it right? Yeah.
So the first point you brought up, and this is, I think, for me, this is key, and this has to do with the something like the matching of the information to reality. How close does the information that you are receiving match reality itself? This is something that, of course, is not easy to do with everything, because, as you said in the second point, there's many things we cannot verify ourselves. So at some point, we do have to go off of what other people say, and we do have to, we have to trust, right? We have to trust what they say. But the first point you brought up with the congruency that information has to reality, that for me is extremely important, because you can have a whole lot of information coming your way, and if the information you are receiving is so detached from reality that you have to go sort of into the deepest, darkest corners of your mind to be able to find a match, then that to me would be very low quality information.
Well, it depends, because when you interact with people, you find out very quickly that people's perception of reality varies a lot, right? So you
Yeah.
give them the exact same piece of information. Some of them will take it and say, this matches my perception of reality, this must be fact. And others will say, there's no way, this doesn't match at all. So into that, you also have to take into account how people even view their reality in the first place.
Right.
If
I
you
can
have
see how.
that not working properly, then that's kind of your measuring stick for everything else. Does it match my reality?
And that I think brings us to the second point that you brought up earlier, like the way you said, the way in which you process the information,
Mm.
and that is logic. In the first segment, we have information is vital. Information needs to be good quality. One of the ways to define what is good quality is how congruent that information is with reality. But then it's taking a step back again to where we said information is vital. You said there it's also important that we process the information correctly.
Mm.
And that is the second part of, for me, that is so important to sense making, is the ability for us to think healthily, like to have good logic,
Mm.
to not fall into logical black holes, essentially, you know.
Yeah.
And that sort of touches on what you were saying about, well, this person will have, you know, two people looking at the same information and walking away with completely different perspectives on it.
Yeah.
And that for me is, it could be that the problem there is the information itself, that the information is just rubbish, but it could also be that there's logical fallacies occurring in the processing of the information. So that is where I see these two things needing to work hand in hand. The quality of the information, but then also the quality of the processing.